plan, after which there will be an opportunity for questions. Can I ask that you put your questions in the chat, and these will be addressed at the end of the presentation. If after we've done that you want to speak or to raise a point of clarification, you can do so by clicking on the button that says raise with a picture of a hand, and then you'll be invited to speak in turn. But if we do that, it's don't please use that. This is more of a comment than a question type thing. We do want to try and keep things fairly short and concise. Also, if you're making any comments. So I'm now going to, so that's the introduction. And I'm now going to hand over to Design Engine to take us through the proposals. And in line with what I've just said, I'm going to switch off my microphone and my camera as well.
Thank you, Martin. I'm just going to share my screen in order to get. So I can't now see any of you, but hopefully you can see that slide. I'll take that as a yes. So my name's Oliver Moore. I'm an associate at Design Engine Architects. I'm just going to introduce on behalf of our team today, and we'll be taking in turns to present so that we don't so you hear a variety of voices and a bit of hopefully maintain the interest as we work our way through the presentation. We'll be presenting what is the content which is available online via the website, and you'll also find the feedback survey there, and obviously take your questions. So available today, myself, Richard Jobson, founding director at Design Engine Architects. Some of you may know, Design Engine are based in Winchester, have been since founding in more than 20 years ago. We're joined by Laura White of New Master Planning. Laura's an urban designer. New Master Planning are based in Bournemouth. We've worked together with Laura and in fact Ollie Davey, who's our transport designer, who is based in London. We've all worked together as a team on a project in Andover for a master plan for the town centre there. So we all know each other and the local area quite well. Some of you may already be familiar with Stephen B, who is again locally based in Winchester, is a planning and heritage building consultant with a history of working within Winchester and even within the planning authority and English heritage as well. So exceptionally well qualified in those fields.
I'm doing a show and tell about the station approach proposals.
Right. Whoever is unmuted, can you please mute yourself? So if you're not Ollie, please mute yourself and make sure your camera's switched off. Thank you.
Okay, so our team were appointed in October 2023. Since then, we've been producing baseline studies of the site, of which we're extremely familiar with, working and basing ourselves just around the corner. We've been engaging with key stakeholder groups, consulting with county stakeholders, council groups, local interest groups and societies within the city in a series of workshops. And out of that, we have identified a vision for the project, which is as shown on the screen. So we think the station approach area, a master plan can deliver its change and evolution into a connected place, lively place to live, work and play, a welcoming gateway, showcasing the nature of the city of Winchester and beyond, as well as fulfilling a role as a sustainable travel hub. So that's our vision for the project. How is that going to be delivered? We have some draft proposals online, as I said, for public review. That's the period in which we're engaged now, up until the middle of October. So available for comment. We'll present them today, and we would implore you to provide your feedback as well as comments today, which we'll address. Please provide your feedback online using the forms on the website to allow that to be collated. And it, as I said, it is a draft, and thoughts and comments, suggestions will be reviewed and incorporated where possible to create a final version. So introduction to the station approach area. It's identified in the local plan. I'm not going to read all of these out. So it's identified to change from its current use into a mixed use site, delivering a proportion of accommodation, also providing a better economic lever to improve employment opportunities in the city, improvements to its sense of arrival into the city and wayfinding beyond, to provide an improvement to the commercial and cultural life in the city, improving the area's environmental impact, including keeping trees and looking for opportunities to improve with new planting, identifying and enhancing important views and respecting the character of the site, and that goes hand in hand with creating a cohesive, high quality townscape and improvements to the public spaces. So where is the station approach project that we're talking about today? So this is the red line. So what's in and what's out? So the Carfax site is the existing car parks, excluding the Hampshire Records Office and the land owned by Hampshire County on Station Hill, but including the old registry office, the station building itself, the trees on Station Hill, the roadways moving along Gladstone Street and along towards Newborough Street, the Department of Defence Infrastructure Organisation site, which has existing mess halls and facilities on that area between Gladstone Street and Newborough Street, so that is included. It includes a variety of landholders, including Network Rail and South West Rail, who operate the station on their land. So the car parks to the west of the station, the northwest of the station, and the north of the station. So nestled between Stockbridge Road and the student residences that were built within recent memory. It also includes the cattle market site, whilst excluding the Winchester Club, so bounded by Worthy Lane and Andover Road. So what is a concept master plan? Well, it is what it says on the page, but it's also important to highlight what it is not. So it is a framework. It is a conceptual set of parameters. It's not detailed. It's not a design for buildings. Some of the visuals you might see today have buildings shown as illustrations. It's by means of making more sense of the concept master plan to show what it could lead. But the concept master plan itself is a framework of principles, of concepts for how the land is used and how development is laid out on the land. It's not a detailed design. It is those principles to guide and inform later projects, which will, we hope, subsequently happen, where packets of land can be developed in detail and planning applications taken forward with all the due diligence and the consultation that each one of those planning applications would involve.
Ollie,
timescale.
Sorry, very quickly, I'm just about to mute everybody, so you'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Okay, hopefully you can still hear me now.
Yes.
Excellent. Timescale. So this is I think it's important to note that this is not a development that's funded and ready to happen now. This work for the concept master plan is a facilitating stepping stone. The sites highlighted are likely to become viable and available at different periods into the future, and hence the core purpose of this is to set a development framework which provides a benefit of a plan that will tie all of those subsequent parcels of development together as pieces of the puzzle are kind of put in place as and when viability and they become developable in the future. So, as I said, we were appointed in October 2023, but the site, as I'm sure most people on the call know, has been subject to a number of studies, proposals over the years, and most pertinent to this piece of work, there was a public engagement within 2022, which kicked off this particular round of processes, which were, as I said, a stepping stone today. The starting point for our brief, if you like, as these agreed development principles on the screen here. And these were developed in consultation with over 1,000 responses from the public and over 90% agreement on each one of these. So I'm not going to read them out, but they are a given of which we've taken each one in turn and asked ourselves, okay, some of these are very laudable, but somewhat generic. How can they actually be applied to this site of station approach? And that's what the master plan concept master plan hopes to take one step further and help to define and in a way visualize. So, as I said, we're going to take it in chapters and talk in turns. So I'm just going to set the context of the city here and where we think the station approach site is relevant. So it is a key position within the city. It sits between the historic centre and the medieval city wall of the site, and where the Roman town and medieval city grew up around the river and around the cathedral, around the abbey, even before the cathedral. The station was built on the outskirts of the Winchester town at that time, surrounded by various farmlands and estates. But Winchester in the 21st century, the station has become an ever more central part of the city as it's grown up around it and continues to grow. You see these hatched areas here are proposed future development or development in process at this time. So in a way, ironically, the station as an arrival point and as an experience for the city of Winchester, it's more relevant now than it was when it was built, both in a positive and negative way, both in delivering people in, an increasing number of people into and out of Winchester on a daily basis, many who might go in and out of the station to London and other locations without actually entering the city, and also as somewhat as a barrier to movement of people moving from where they live into and out of the city in terms of the economic benefit for Winchester. Some rather interesting photos here about the station, looking up the station hill to the station building itself, which has changed only subtly over the years since the 1900s. But the development around it has changed radically. So this street of buildings and different types of use here were replaced by the records office and the car parking adjoining it. The Carfax junction has ever increasingly been more dominated by traffic and movement around it. So key characters of Winchester. This was something we thought, it's a tricky word, Winchesterness, and we think we should best try to avoid it. But what makes the character of Winchester distinct from other cities? And we came across this quote from Keats. So this is in the 1800s, and we wonder if this prevails today, this idea of Winchester being a very wooded city, a city with buildings that have grown up around the trees and the nature that were existed before it. We think that's still in evidence today, and perhaps something that could be a core characteristic of, as you move around Winchester streets, you observe this greenery and the trees that exist in the town. It could be reinforced and nurtured into the future. So we took those 4 development principles and we've identified 6 key themes, if you like, which we're going to narrate in turn. And these are the way we've structured the concept master plan. So arrival, addressing the experience of the station area for visitors, residents, commuters alike. Opportunities to offer new places to live and work, different land uses on the site. Movement, integrating the city and its surroundings with sustainable transport options. Vibrancy, so bringing public uses to the centre of the Carfax site and creating a new sense of a station quarter, a hub of activity, where perhaps it isn't so much today. Biodiversity, so allocating space to improve biodiversity, maintain that natural setting I've just mentioned for the city. And character, so embracing the character of the city of Winchester, its townscape, creating distinctive roots and scale which knits in with the city's heritage. So in turn, I'm going to pass to my colleague Laura, who's going to talk over the arrival sequence and improvements.
Thank you, Ollie, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to go through the concept master plan with you all. So I'd like to kind of expand on the term arrival and talk also about destinations and connections. And I think that's something really important for this first theme. And it relates back to that first development principle about a connected, sustainable development. And one of the key feedbacks from the 2022 public consultation was that people wanted to experience a greater sense of arrival to Winchester and improved wayfinding. That was one of the big themes that came out of the responses. So Ollie, if we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So a starting point for this concept was about creating strong arrival spaces to the front and the back of the station, east and west, the city side and full flood side. And that these spaces should create a positive first impression arriving into the city for visitors, but also make residents love why they live in Winchester. It should reflect the character and the charm and the history of Winchester, but they should also be pleasant spaces for people to arrive in, to depart from, to meet and to pass through. But a big part of shaping this concept has also been about understanding those wider destinations and the people are going to from and around the station once they've come to it, be the town centre along City Road or Station Road, to Peter Simmons College, or full flood along Stockbridge Road, and those key employers such as Hampshire County Council, the hospital and the university. Now, some of these routes that we've highlighted are beyond the scope, but it's important for us to understand how this project fits into that wider city picture. And if we can demonstrate the importance of them, it helps to create a more connected city. Within the station approach area, we can incorporate into the Concept Masterplan some of those key connections that we think are important to help make a more connected city. For example, formalizing diagonal routes through the Carfax site. That'll help improve connections onto the town centre and onto the Hampshire County Council offices. And that is something that we know with the levels around the site that this should be an accessible and flat route if possible. And one of the other things that we'd like to try and achieve is enabling a safe and accessible route through the cattle market site between Andover Road and Worthy Lane. We know that this is very much a desirable link for people using educational facilities and leisure facilities and at the moment they're having to cut through a car park and across a busy road. So it's about making that connection more viable, improved walking routes from full flood itself up to the station. The creation of another arrival space north of the city centre. As Ollie mentioned, we're having a lot of development growth, for example, at Kings Barton and north of the city. So Andover Road is becoming a much more important arrival route. And if we can try and capture and create a better arrival space and get some of that traffic away from the Carfax junction and create an arrival space north of the station, that would be fantastic. And about improving connections under the station itself. That's something that the students mentioned, and we'll come to that in a little bit more. Improving connections between the college and the town itself. But also with these connections about creating a variety of pocket parks and spaces to make these routes more enjoyable and to create a piece of neighbourhood within the city. Ollie, if you could go to the next slide. In terms of how we think this could look, as Ollie mentioned, these are just visuals to try and help bring the concept to life. So this is the arrival space, how we think it could be to the front of the station. And I'll let Ollie talk more about the transport movements. I don't want to steal his thunder. But really, this is about creating a arrival space that gives people a second to collect themselves before or after their journey. A space that's clearly guiding them onwards to other destinations in the town. A space that's made up of high quality materials. And that reflects the historic buildings that are around it. It creates a nice setting for the station itself and for the registry building opposite. And most importantly, and I think again something that came very strongly out of the public survey, is that people want places to sit. They want better shelters for buses. They want planting and they want more lighting for the evening. So it's trying to create a public realm that delivers all of those things. And underneath the visual, we've got some images, exemplar images from other projects. Some of these are in the UK and abroad, just to sort of show you how we think this space could be brought to life. If you could go to the next slide, Ollie. Thank you. And there's also, as we mentioned, from the station approach north, if this site were ever to be redeveloped, we think that the parking could be perhaps consolidated, and there's an opportunity to create cycle parking, kiss and ride drop off, and again intercept some of that movement from the Carfax junction and create a better arrival into the north of the station. At the station arrival west, on the photo at the left, you can see there, It's sort of a very long parade and a very narrowly marked area for pedestrians to walk through. Unfortunately, cars have gotten bigger. They often overhang that space. Pedestrians are put out into the middle of the road. One of the ideas we had was, again, if the capacity were to be reduced or the need would be reduced for those spaces, if we could turn that over to a nice pedestrian walkway and cycleway that would give people a safe route that could be lit and planted up to the station. Again, creating a better arrival experience, promoting sustainable modes of transport. And the bottom photo was an idea that the students at Peter Symonds College came up with when we met with them. And a lot of them use this sort of underpass under the station to connect from the college into the town centre or to the opposite side of the station. And they came up with the idea of creating a mural or some artwork. Perhaps this could be developed in conjunction with the college students or with local artists, something that was historic or perhaps just interesting and fun, but again, something that made the space feel a little bit more fun, lively, animated and safer to pass through. So I'll pass back to you, Ollie.
Thanks, Laura. So moving on to the second theme, if you like, live and work or opportunities for alternative land uses. Many of the sites at the moment, as you'll know, Cattle Market, Carfax, and the station car parks themselves, they're all dominated by surface car parking. It's a sort of mono-use, monoculture, and whilst that generates some revenue for the landowners, it doesn't really offer much in terms of dynamic different uses or opportunities for improving, increasing places to live and opportunities to work. So following the local plan guidance, the master plan will seek to identify which areas of land can bring new value to the area, new flats, houses, homes, a variety of different types of homes, social, market rent, young, old, student residences, later living, etc. And different types of workspace, from your traditional office to more informal working spaces, places to meet, eat, socialize, identifying a sort of a waypoint, a place to stop and pause and dwell as you move through the station or as you visit the station, for those who commute and work outside of Winchester and move in and out of the station every day. So apologies if some of the, I mean, this is all available online to download and scrutinise. Some of the titles are a little bit small on this, so I'll just point this out to you. So the sites in turn, the Carfax site here, we think is an opportunity for some retail use, and that could be cafe, it could be convenience retail, a small supermarket is often successful next to the station. Having somewhere, as shown in the previous visual, this registry office, at one time in its life it was a pub. If that was to be a cafe or a bar, it would provide somewhere for people to dwell and inhabit and sit, and that in turn could bring life to the area into the through the day and into the evenings, and that additional people in the area creates better safety and better feeling of safety in the areas that it overlooks. People living and working in this area, again, having a population on site where at the moment there's just car parking, can help with that sense of safety, and gives the land different value to the city, if you like. So different types of workspaces and residential would be accommodated on a variety of buildings on the Carfax site here. I think creating space for the buildings to breathe, and particularly addressing the existing listed building of the Hampshire Archives and Records Office. Also embracing the idea that there's a cultural use currently to the Records Office that could be explored further in future, and that can benefit by being an attractor, if you like, for people to visit the area. Opportunities on Station Hill for pop-up retail, you know, the idea of a market stall or a coffee bar, one of the trailers, etc. Just the more people that you have moving through here, I think there's a real opportunity to engage with the passing trade that is kind of lacking at the moment. So the DIO site, I think this one can complete a residential block here and offer opportunity for dense residential development, which can offer value to the city in terms of delivering new affordable and market homes which are in demand in Winchester, as we know. Similarly, it's different owners, but in the long term, if and when parking demand and requirements, which are somewhat set by government policy, if and when they were reviewed around station areas or even demand changed, there might be opportunity to develop residential units kind of along Stockbridge Road, if you like, in the car park there, creating more of a feel of an inhabited street through that area of the city there. We think the northwest site, the long thin strip running parallel to Brassey Road, is probably a site that is so close to the railway line that is probably the one that you would consolidate and retain as car parking rather than proposed development along that site. The existing multi-storey car park on the Station North area, we can see that is a key use. Our proposal would be to retain that but relocate it, so effectively remove and replace it with car parking which you could develop over, so additional student residential, possibly a hotel use, but above an amount of car parking retained on that site, but relocated in order to provide, as Laura was saying, a bit of more public realm to provide better routes through and around and to access the station through that site. So coming finally to the Cattle Market, this is a site which we think would be residential led, a good place to live, bordering the neighbourhoods of Hyde here. There could be a variety of private market, flats, townhouses, later living, student housing, space for rent, space for purchase, affordable housing upon that site. We do think that it could benefit from some animation through a small bar or a cafe, maybe some play space, some pocket parks as mentioned previously. The Winchester Club could be retained as it offers community use. It could be supplemented by additional community facilities within the site. So these are some views here showing the aspect, if you like, from Andover Road, looking down the hill as you enter Winchester, where currently there isn't anything of note on the left hand side there. It's an open car park. The opportunity to develop residential properties along there, we'd show this is, for example, modelled on, just as an example, the Chesil Street development for later living there. So blocks animating the street, the changing levels to bring in different materials, planting to kind of animate the street edge there, if you like, trees interrupting buildings to give you those sense of greenery as you move down the street, possibly with some development which provides more of a landmark or focal point on the junction of Worthy Road and Andover Road there. Another view here, this time looking from Newber Street, looking down to the Carfax site. So Richard's going to come and talk about opportunities for landmarks and height in a later slide. This shows the DIO site here with a development of flats furthest away from the existing residential properties and facing onto the street where there currently is a relatively large building, albeit not as tall as this would be, existing already. On the Gladstone Street car parks, there's the opportunity to provide office space, which could necessarily be of a particular height and density to provide opportunity for new employers to be attracted to Winchester, or even relocate existing employers within the city. This just shows some of the different types of, there's the example there of Chesil Lodge that I mentioned earlier, and other student residential and townhouse developments around the city. I should say actually, on the land use, we, as well as the public consultation we inherited, there was also a capacity study which was done previously, which identified a kind of quantum of viable development across all of these sites. And so that's something we've been given, and we've been tasked to distribute that through the Concept Masterplan as to how and where that quantum of development and the uses it would contain be positioned on the site. I'll just talk further on the subject of vibrancy. So this is adding new facilities for Winchester, enabling the station area to be seen as a station quarter, somewhere that you might go to eat, meet, drink, a destination, if you like, or a waypoint on other journeys. So we think it's important that these development have what we term active frontage. So that's not buildings with blank facades where there's no life. So the, albeit small on this diagram, the coloured boundaries here show where shop fronts or entrances to offices, etc. In fact, even the rear elevation, if you're familiar with that, of the records office is one of its most open and permeable and active facades looking into an existing garden. In the fullness of time, as this site became developed, there's opportunities to better integrate that garden space to the rear of the records office and open up that aspect of an existing building to help contribute to creating a lively space within it's a bit car-free, pedestrianised space within the Carfax block, which would be a good place to visit and contain some of these activities. So, for example, public space improvements, places to eat or meet, pop-up spaces, and like I said, the cultural offer of the records office, or however that may evolve in the future. Convenience store and or cafe use adjacent to the registry office there facing the station. In terms of cattle market, again, it's residential led, but also some opportunities for spaces for play for younger generations, spaces for families, spaces for people to sit. There's a high student population here. There's schools which look to engage their students in the community, experience the community. There's places here for people to sit and dwell that help to define this informal route through the site from east to west here. The buildings would be spaced around that and support that with, again, active facades and front doors looking onto the streets, cafe facilities looking onto the squares there, office entrances looking onto major junctions and addresses, residential accesses looking onto junctions and new addresses, maybe smaller entrances along the Worthy Road lane area. I'm going to hand to Ollie Davey here to talk us through some of the movement strategies and proposals for the site.
Thanks, Ollie. Good evening, everyone. So I suppose the place to start really is that ultimately this train station is fundamentally about movement. And so regardless of all the other stuff that's going on, the movement element still has to happen. We can't ignore that. The pie chart bottom right there is from the train operator at the station, South West Rail, and you can see from that the vast majority of people turning up at the station at the moment are on foot. When asked how they arrive, they walk, and I think that's really important and kind of key to where we're coming from with this. And I think it's also important to understand, regardless of what mode you turn up by, whether you're being dropped off by someone in a car or you're riding by bus or you've cycled or whatever it might be, fundamentally that last bit of the journey you make to the station will be as a pedestrian, pretty much. You will kind of walk in and out of the station and on and off of a train. And so what we're trying to do is give the station that breathing space that at the moment it doesn't really have. So going back to what Laura was saying about that arrival experience, at the moment you come out of the station and you do well not to trip over cars turning up, buses going past, taxis running through, cyclists going through about their business. And it's giving people the opportunity to orientate themselves, to just take a breath, find out where they are and work out where they want to go. They might be meeting someone, whatever it is they're doing, it's giving them that chance. And we find the best stations and the best forecourts that are out there are the ones that encourage everybody just to take a step back, whichever mode of travel it is, just to give it that room. So in order to create that space, this diagram on the left here just looks at how we're proposing to sort of reassign space to different modes of travel. So buses will continue to pass through in front of the station. And I think that earlier visual that Laura put up tried to explain that. But they would be the only things that really pass in front of the station, other than the kind of emergency service vehicles that we have to allow through there and the odd bit of servicing at the station. But really, fundamentally, we want to try and keep that space immediately to the west west of, to the east of the station. People arrive facing the city centre. We want to keep that as clear as possible, so that people can enter that space and just have a moment to work out what it is they're doing and where they want to be going. What we're then trying to do is ensure that everybody else still gets the access that they need to the station. The next most popular way of arriving at the moment is obviously being picked up and dropped off by private car. What we want to do is move that to the other car parks by sort of rearranging those car parks to make that possible. So that would happen essentially to the north and to the west of the train station. Taxis would remain on that western side of the station, but would now enter from the south. They'd loop up and they'd go straight back out again. Okay, so that's not, again, that's ensuring that we're trying to keep that area in front of the eastern access to the station as clear as possible. We want cyclists to have options to safely, securely lock their bike up whichever direction they're coming from. And we also need to obviously maintain sufficient car parking at the station, and particularly disabled and accessible car parking at the station as well, to ensure that people still have those options going forwards. As it was said right at the beginning, this is a concept master plan, so this isn't drawing any kind of firm lines down. This is about ideas going forwards, and from a transport point of view, that's particularly challenging, trying to work out 15-20 years from now what is that situation going to look like. So invariably we need some flexibility built into this plan, but ultimately what we're trying to do is create that kind of new public space, a really kind of I don't know, I suppose I'm still rather romantic about train travel, and even if my commute doesn't always feel like that, but this real kind of sense of occasion of arriving in Winchester by train or leaving by train, it should be something that should be celebrated much more so than it is at the moment. If we just go on to the next slide, please, Ollie, if that's okay. Great, and then this one really just tries to, I won't dwell on this too long, there's a lot going on here, but it's about ensuring that as sites come forward, whether it's Cattle Market or Carfax, and I think Laura's already touched on this, that idea that we ensure that we take those opportunities when those sites come forward to make new connections through them, as is shown sort of through Cattle Market. There's an existing link through there, but it's not particularly great to use. We really want to strengthen that. We also take opportunities to use some of those sites potentially, such as the Cattle Market as it runs alongside Andover Road, to really make the most of that. We want to get kind of better frontage along there. We might want to widen that. There are aspirations for a bus lane on the approach down there. And then the final thing really is looking at junctions. We can't, as part of this, go into too much detail on the junctions, but things like Carfax clearly could perform better for pedestrians as they arrive into the city and they move their way into kind of the core of the city from the train station. And so there are options there to look at those. But really, that's about trying to make the whole place work as a unit. At the moment, it feels quite disjointed. It's about connecting it together and making sure, as I say, the key thing is we take those opportunities as they come forwards to build the network that we want. Thanks, Ollie.
Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, I'll just chip in before handing to Laura for the next section on biodiversity. I think just to reiterate that point on what's in and out of the red line, and there are areas of opportunity which border this concept master plan site, like potential opportunities to re-envisage how Carfax Junction, City Road, Andover Road might develop in future. They are outside of the remit of this concept master plan, and they are within the gift of Hampshire County Highways. But what we can do and have done within, say, the master plan for, say, the Cattle Market here is looked at the opportunity to provide bus and cycle lanes on the side of Andover Road, what that might necessitate in terms of where you can and can't build on the Cattle Market. So the concept master plan, for example, suggests a significant setback of a number of meters for development on this Andover Road edge of the Cattle Market in order to benefit the future plans for the areas outside of the site, for Andover Road, for example. And so that's the interaction between what we can do within the red line and what we need to be cognizant of but aren't able to include in the concept master plan outside the red line, for example. I'll pass to Laura.
Thank you, Ollie. So one of the next big themes that we wanted to look at was biodiversity. And again, going back to that 2022 survey, 75% of the respondents felt that the retention, expansion and maintenance of trees and green spaces was really important for the station approach master plan, which we agree with. And when you look at a Google Earth image of the area, it looks very green, but a lot of this is created by tree canopy cover, private gardens or institutional space, which isn't actually necessarily usable by the public, such as Peter Symonds playing fields. So the area itself in the study area lacks accessible open space. And this is backed up by Winchester's open space assessment, which highlights a shortage of green space in the area. Any master plan that goes forward is worth pointing out. We'll also need to deliver a new government requirement for biodiversity net gain. This needs to be 10%. So this means that by any new development in the area, they'll also need to increase the amount of greenery, and that needs to be calculated by 10%. So that's worth noting in any proposals that go forward. So a starting point that we thought was for the concept was actually looking at that existing greenery around the site and how that could be enhanced. A lot of it is made up of sloping banks, for example, along Stockbridge Road. You've got railway sidings, and you've got a lot of tree cover, but a lot of that is often covering car parking areas. So it's providing shade to cars rather than people. So it's looking at how those areas could be improved. For example, one of the things that we looked at was along Station Hill. If you were to remove the car parking under the trees, could you incorporate seeding, planting, other uses which would be much better for and much more healthy for the trees long term? Along Stockbridge Road, could those green banks be improved? Some better maintenance strategies. When we met again with the students at Peter Symonds College, a lot of those described those spaces as sort of grim and unloved. And again, by providing a little bit of greenery and enhanced maintenance along there, this could have a positive impact on the surrounding shops on Stockbridge Road. So there is a wider impact to improving the greenery as well. In terms of some of the key points for, we talked about these new arrival spaces. They should really look to incorporate as much greenery as possible. That will help to soften the space, make it more enjoyable. For the concept, we should really look to be incorporating drought-tolerant planting, ecology-rich species, and planting that provides shade for people. Could we also look to incorporate rain gardens into these spaces to help manage some of the rainfall to help manage water after big rainfalls? So you can sort of see some of the pictures that we have on the right-hand side. Are some of the reference images that we've used. Again, for that arrival space on Station Hill, could it incorporate using the levels, try and incorporate some seeding and some planting areas? Could we look to protect the existing trees right up by the station with some benches around them? Again, that's great for people waiting or for people who want to eat a sandwich outside of the station, people who arrive earlier. Could we look to incorporate greenery that has informal play for kids as you go through the site? I think that's quite fun for children to be involved in nature. So it's looking at how we can incorporate some of those features into the area. So if we could go to the next slide, Ollie, I'll just talk a little bit about that. So within each of the development sites, it's really important that we create new accessible open spaces. That'll bring benefits of biodiversity to the area, but it will also bring benefits to new residents and new people working in those areas. This is a visual of how that could look in the middle of the Carfax site. Again, celebrating the rear of the registry office, having new uses around there, but again, having greenery, planting and seeding to enhance that space, perhaps water features and play, which really creates a place that, close to the station, that's a little bit of calm and peace in the center of the city, but quite an urban area. Along Andover Road, if we're to look at the next one, again, we sort of talked about the importance that large trees have in Winchester, and they require quite a bit of space. So it's looking at where can we create spaces and opportunities to continue that legacy for Winchester, and where can we incorporate larger trees? And again, this is along that connection that we talked about from Andover Road through to Worthy Lane. Can we create a space there? It's opposite the Tesco's. This is a space that the students said they'd like to have outdoor spaces. There's somewhere they could go and sit and eat. It's a connecting route through, and it's bringing just a little bit of greenery into the city. Again, that provides so much biodiversity and so much importance for the surrounding area.
Thanks, Laura. I think the key point is offering nature that's accessible to the users, as opposed to some of the spaces where there's greenery on the site, but it really is somewhat wasted in terms of its impact and amenity for people. I'm going to pass to Richard, my colleague, now to talk about the way we've picked up on the characteristics of development in Winchester to inform these proposals.
Thank you, Ollie. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, so moving on to the character element of the Concept Masterplan. This is kind of always an area which often causes the most amount of sort of conversation in some respects, and trying to understand what that actually kind of means, and particularly means for a city like Winchester. Ollie mentioned the word Winchesterness earlier on, and it was a phrase that's been used quite a lot over the last few years, and trying to understand what that actually means. I've kind of lived and worked in the city of Winchester since the late 80s, so I've got to know the city quite well. At an architectural level, there's many buildings in Winchester which are quite typical of kind of Hampshire, the type of buildings in terms of the timelines that's gone through from sort of Roman, medieval, Georgian, Victorian, etc. So in some ways there's a lot of similarities to other local towns and villages. So what makes Winchester more Winchester than anything else? And that's always a very tricky area to discuss, but certainly from the studies that we've done, and certainly the knowledge that we've had about the city, it's often to do with the way you actually process through space. And you move from, say, a sort of a larger street, the high street, through spaces which are gap spaces, like here in an image here by the Buttercross, into the square, and then suddenly open up into the space that sits in front of the cathedral. And it's these kind of series of sort of interlinking spaces of different scale and different architectural kind of styles and different areas, which actually makes it quite unique and obviously very popular for people. And obviously the square over recent years has been a bit of a metamorphosis from the days in the 80s where it was a bit of a rat run for car users. Increasingly that's been sort of prevented, and suddenly what happens, the shops and pubs and cafes open up, and it's full of people and enjoying what is a great part of the city. And I think it's a good example of how, if you can slowly kind of cleverly remove cars, how suddenly you can make spaces where people want to come and visit, and actually it draws in huge numbers of people, obviously not just those that live here, but obviously visitors coming into the city, and it's a very popular part of the city. So that's one area which we kind of feel needs to sort of be a key part of how we develop this the project moving forward. And we've seen a lot of development over the years, and we've obviously been party to some of the documentation that's been looked at regarding this particular series of sites around Carfax and Cattle Market, and how a lot of it is about just how much you can get on the sites, kind of effectively kind of maximizing the capacity for commercial gain. But that's, we understand the reasons for commercial kind of drivers, but there's a way of doing this which we feel may be slightly differently organized. So the sort of sketch on the left is sort of crossed out rather graphically in red, a kind of crude series of blocks that sit on the site. What we are trying to develop here is an attitude which is about how you sit buildings on sites, and where you actually provide much more positive open spaces or pocket park spaces between those buildings, which both allow for the biodiversity Laura talked about, large tree growth, but also the idea that you meander through space, as opposed to this idea of a much more sort of almost mathematical process of just, we put a street here, a street there. These are not a very successful way of operating. I think also importantly here is what Ollie talked about, which was the idea of active frontages. This isn't just about obviously always having shops, but it's having shops as well as office entrances to people's houses. So everything like this makes the streets much more lively. So it's a very crude conceptual drawing, but it's a sort of a driver to how we'd see development moving forward into the future. Next slide. The other thing that, after wandering around the streets of Winchester, you start to become more aware of is going back to the Keats letter to his sister, that the city is built amongst or around landscape. So the landscape is there and you build the city around it. I mean, obviously it wasn't a city in the early days, but it's become one. And I think we're very keen to understand how you can actually build a sort of a modern progressive city like Winchester in a way that's much more positive towards the landscape spaces that are essential to make the space a place you want to live and work in. And we actually stare at a lot of these images, and now if you walk around the streets of Winchester, many of you are probably aware of this, virtually every street is kind of dominated by significant trees. Now actually often these trees sit in private gardens. And these examples here, St Thomas Street, Great Minster Street, obviously that's in the Cathedral Green, but the ones here image on the right, St Thomas Street, these are actually in private ownership, and we rely on these trees, some of them 150, 200-foot trees, many of them in excess of 100 years old. They provide a huge sort of part of how we understand the city as we walk around it. And it's therefore, I think it's important that when we move forward as a development, that we sort of almost start with the landscaping first. So Laura's talked about biodiversity pocket parks. We've actually tried to put these into the concept master plan from the beginning. So instead of just saying we build a load of buildings in a space and then we try and plant some trees along the edge on a pavement, which we know never really works. Highways hate them, but the trees don't really flourish. They don't really turn into maturity. So I think it's important over the next kind of years that we start planting trees that are going to be for the generations moving forward over the next few hundred years. And if we don't do that, I think slowly we will lose that sense of the city being amongst the landscape. So I think it's been a key driver to the way we thought about this, but there is implications to that, and obviously it means that how much development can you get on a site. So it moves on to another point, which is about scale, massing and height, which is always obviously a very sensitive area for conversation. Most planning policy is sort of saying 4 stories is your limit. But I think increasingly when you look at Winchester, it's a very topographic city. It's got, it's very, very hilly for those that like to walk around and certainly cycle around it. You certainly notice it. How you can actually manipulate the buildings to sit within the landscape, to utilize height in a positive way. So clearly in front of buildings where there's domestic buildings of a certain scale, you want to be respectful for that, to not feel as if they're oppressive or overshading them. But in some other key areas, we feel there's opportunities for scale. And this, I think, means that the roofscape of Winchester still retains a dynamic quality to itself. I think often the problem we have as we are increasingly a secular society, we lose the opportunity for the sort of spires and towers and stuff that often came out of sort of Christian architecture, and therefore there's opportunities for maybe sort of buildings that occasionally do reach to the sky. And in some of these plans here we've shown very indicative, just showing the idea of how mass could work. We feel particularly on the Carfax site, in the relationship with station approach, you could go taller. And in fact, one of the images that Ollie showed earlier on was actually a building that was above 5 stories. So could that happen? We think in places, if it's sensitively managed, we feel these things could be done successfully, whilst respecting obviously the surrounding buildings that are with it. So I think there's a sort of a conversation to be had collectively about, yes, we need to create more space for planting, parks, spaces for people, but how can we sort of balance that with the need for obviously certain buildings going taller, 5+ stories high, and that obviously needs to be managed in terms of obviously a detailed applications and things like that. But it's something that I think we felt we would at least open up for the conversation at this point in time. So next slide. And similarly, I think when you move on to Cattle Market, again, Ollie spoke about this site being predominantly we see as a sort of residential site, but there's opportunities again on the Andover sort of Worthy Lane junction, which has this quite interesting sort of V with a very, very beautiful tree on the corner. Could the development on that part there go taller to mean that we can create more space? I think the opportunity to create a larger open space opposite Tesco's, I think would be a really advantageous to Andover Road. We don't like the idea of providing sort of a wall of buildings coming in through Andover Road. In fact, when we as architects developed the Chesil Street project, we were very keen that the building was pushed away from Chesil Street and actually created a series of sort of garden spaces in front, so that when you come into the city, yes, there's building, but it's in amongst trees that over time will obviously grow to maturity. So I think that's the sort of thing we've been trying to explore here, again, just to look at being sensible about, you know, what can we achieve on these sites, both in terms of the need for, you know, housing, the need for sort of offices, the need for sort of certain amount of shopping, etc., and how can it be balanced against the need, the increasing need, I have to say, for maintaining our sort of landscape that flows into our city. And an image here just looking down Worthy Lane with the houses on the left obviously existing, and then buildings that are set back, the idea of opportunities for sort of space for those trees and plants to grow. And then looking further down with the bus, you know, there's a taller building which is associated with the railway station. You know, it feels that that could be made to work in terms of the city working as a sort of a modern 21st century city. And potentially, as you can see there, a small tower poking up, which could be on the corner of Worthy Lane and Andover Road, which again gives us the roofscape more dynamism. It provides points of focus, and obviously this relies on obviously good quality architecture, which obviously we'd hope would achieve. Well, we know, not necessarily us, but obviously through the planning process we'd be able to achieve. So this is the kind of the direction of travel I think we've been going in terms of our approach to this concept master plan. Is that the last slide, Ollie? Yeah.
I'm just going to invite Steve B to join us and talk us through some of the key heritage features of these sites and our response to them.
Thanks, Ollie. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to be here. It may seem a little odd to be talking about the heritage of Winchester towards the end of a presentation like this, but I can assure you that I've been involved with the project from the outset, helping the team to recognise the features of historic significance that should be sustained, and to identify elements of distinctiveness in places and spaces, and indeed views through them, that should be protected and hopefully to be replicated as well. To understand and specify the sensitivity to change, and identify beyond that the settings, the areas that could be enhanced. And so through doing that, I hope that I can help to identify potential for investment in not just in this site but in the wider area, and perhaps create exemplars for things that might happen in the future. Winchester's history has been extensively and intensively studied for centuries, and there are people here this evening who will know more about much of it than I do. But I have worked more widely since I left Winchester and studied historic places across the UK and overseas. And there's building on the knowledge that we have of Winchester. I've been able to help the team to identify features that are perhaps more open to adaptation, and to see the historic setting of this study area as not particularly sensitive, certainly in relation to other parts of Winchester, and so that there, as Richard was just suggesting, that there is significant scope for adaptation and addition to the existing environment, that would add to rather than detract from its character. And you can't see it particularly clearly on this side, but on this slide, but the lightly shaded area of the Winchester Conservation Area wraps around the study area and explicitly excludes it, because it's not particularly attractive or historic, even though the station and the railway is probably one of the most significant historic features in the city. But surrounding our study area are features of great significance that deserve to be taken into account, and their setting to be protected and enhanced. If I just quickly go through some of those. To the west of the station, you'll see the light brown outline of St Paul's Church, a Grade 2 listed building on the edge of Orams Arbour, which is situated on a small bluff that looks out over the station area. I mention this specifically because it was part of a legal challenge to the previous proposals for this area, which concluded that the judicial review concluded that it hadn't been given sufficient attention. So we're certainly making sure that it does. But it is worth noting that that although it's a listed building, there are no views from within the church. It's a fine building, and it has been remarkably well adapted and modernized in recent years. So it's an excellent example of a modern facility as well as a Victorian church. But the churchyard itself is not particularly well used. There is a play school on part of it, but the rest of it is a car park. But it does offer potentially views across the site, which might be enhanced actually by the development of the Carfax site. Another building, well, the other listed building within this view is the Hampshire Records Office, which is technically outside our study area, but of course is wrapped almost completely by the area that we're studying, and is arguably the most conspicuous building in the area. It was listed in 2022 as an example of modern buildings that were built during the reign of the late Queen, and it was part of a celebration of her Platinum Jubilee. That it was one of a number of buildings of the period that were recognised. It does have a significant impact on the immediate area, but it is a building built for a specific purpose with a particular style, and I would say not particularly responsive to its historic setting. But as a listed building, we now need to make sure that its setting is protected and enhanced to the extent that it needs to be. So we've taken that into account. The station itself is not listed, but is a fine example of Victorian architecture that is that has been, as Ollie was saying earlier on, has not been changed significantly throughout all of the time that the railway services have been improved. Well, I was going to say improved. They certainly changed a lot over the last 150 years or so. So that's an important building. Another unlisted building of some significance is what is now the Winchester Club, formerly a fine villa in a large garden on what became later the cattle market. Now rather degraded over the years as it's been adapted for leisure and recreational use. Still an important facility for Winchester, but not the historically important building that it once was. There are, in addition to these individual buildings, a number of frontages around the site, which are distinctive and add to the character of the wider area. The edges of Orams Arbour and Hyde and Full Flood, and those frontages are distinctive in themselves and not only worthy of protection of their historic character, but they may also inform the ways in which the area might be developed in the future. And finally, I would just want to make a point about the Carfax junction itself. It's an important and historic part of the circulation of Winchester. It has become degraded, as Ollie was saying earlier, by the level of traffic that it now has to accommodate. And although it's not within the control of this, within the influence directly of this study at the moment, by setting a good example for development around it, then I'd like to think that there's significant scope for enhancing the character of that, and maybe making better use also of the records office adjacent to it, and helping it to contribute more actively to the character both of the development site to the west and to the important entrance to the city centre to the east. I think that will probably do from me for now.
Thanks very much, Steve. Just to mention as well that we have as a team considered the visibility of these sites from wider townscape locations around the city, including, there's a list here, St Catherine's Hill, etc., and Blue Boar Hill. And that's been part and parcel of our assessment of height and impact of what is appropriate on these sites. So I'm going to leave you with an overall sketch, if you like. As I said, this proposal is not about the buildings themselves. It's about the distribution of uses, the activity of space, the linkages between buildings, and the public realm that surrounds, and within the gift of the Red Line, the public realm improvements and highway transitions that can be made adjoining the station. And this really tries to put it all on one slide in a kind of micro scale, micro view, if you like, to show, I think we believe, how an appropriate response to development on these sites can knit into the city of Winchester. Finally, a pitch to have your view, log your feedback and your thoughts on the survey online, which is, I'm not expecting you to scan this QR code now, but just to say that it's available on the website with the feedback survey there, open until the 27th of October. I'll hand back to Martin. That concludes our presentation content.
Great, thank you very much indeed, and thank you to everybody for all the comments and questions that have been added as the meeting's been going on. In terms of the consultation response, I did want to just quickly highlight that you also have an in-person drop-in event, don't you, on the 19th of October from 10 till 2 p.m, which also might be good as well for those who find it suitable. And that's at Design Engine Architect, so you get to see the inside of their office, which is always very interesting to see other people's offices. Anyway, right, a lot of comments and questions. I'm just going to go through the ones in chat, and also congratulations to Hugh McNaughton, who found the Q&A functionality as well, so we go through those ones as well. Starting from the top, John Hearn has said the boundary brackets red line should be drawn wider to include all the public realm, roads, junctions and connections to key destinations. John, do we have any reaction or thoughts about that? I think you've made quite a few comments about things that in places do sit outside the red line, but who would like to answer that or respond to that, or just note it? Silence.
I wonder if Emma's on the call in terms of having set the brief from a Winchester regeneration perspective.
Well, I'm just also slightly wondering how much wider John had in mind. I don't know if it's John here at the moment.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, John.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, you've included some of the public realm. When I talk about the public realm, I'm talking about the surrounding roads that abut the station approach regeneration area, and well, not only abut them, but they are within it, as defined by the Regulation 19 local plan, and they, as proposals go forward based on a concept master plan, and also as movement strategy proposals come underway, they will have to change, and there will have to be a mechanism for funding them. Now, in normal circumstances, if you include some of the roads and public realm within the red line, there will be, or would be, a mechanism for funding them. When I was a planner for we entered into 106 legal agreements all the time with developers. But there are key things that will need change and will have an impact on the development. And these are junctions, their streets, their pedestrian routes to important destinations. And most of what you've said tonight and most of what is included within the concept master plan doesn't actually make reference to how they will change. I mean, a key thing that you've missed or deleted from earlier proposals or ideas or discussions is a main pedestrian link coming from the station along Station Hill, the top end of Newburgh Street, and down the upper High Street. And now it's been downgraded in this master plan for no apparent reason, even though it's the shortest route, the most historic route, the most attractive route into the town centre, to Westgate, past the Elizabeth Frink.
Okay, so let's quickly touch on that. So that's a good example. I don't want to get into a huge conceptual argument because I'm not sure how far we can take the discussion here today. But how have we addressed that discussion as to how, for example, the site connects to the Westgate? Because that has been quite an active discussion, was an active feature of previous discussions. Is that?
Yeah, I can take that one, Martin, or I can at least start the response. Thanks, John, for highlighting that, which we didn't pick up on when we were presenting. We do believe that is an opportunity which does sit inside the red line. It's one of the areas where the highway is within the red line gift, and so the proposal is to take the existing footway and widen it on both sides to improve planting onto the street, narrow the street to reorientate the way that traffic moves through that particular area around that urban block, and that can provide better facility for pedestrians both on the developed side of the street where the houses are, and a more wider, more generous, more well-planted opportunity to define the route up the hill from the station and over and down through the Westgate. So the opportunity here is to even relocate railings and push them further, a metre or so onto the Network Rail land there, and improve the planting around either side of the railings there, on either side of the path, to provide a more generous access. So that is an area that I should have narrated as we went through, where we are improving the public realm and the pedestrian routes, and indeed the cycle access to the station from that direction, because it is within the red line.
But the red line stops at the bridge, and you can't cross the junction to go down Upper High Street, and it's congested. It's just things like this that need.
We have a lot to get through.
Yeah,
John. I think there's also things that are probably worth discussing to reflect the fact that some of how infrastructure has changed quite a lot in recent times, and there are opportunities, for example, to respond through the local plan, and there is a transport infrastructure plan, I can't remember exactly what it's called, that's included as part of that in a way that wasn't in the past, and that could be something that you could respond to possibly as well. The next comment, Sue made a comment that the registry office is currently being is going to open as a business. That's right, it's been let, but I don't think that necessarily stands in the way of the master planning process. Brian's got an important question. What is your assumption about increase or decrease in people arriving by bus? We're planning to reduce traffic in the city centre. There will be an increase in bus traffic. Will there be a shuttle to collect with Winchester bus station? Many people who travel by bus and train cannot walk very far and have luggage. It seems to me you have not allowed enough space for bus and car drop off. You need to plan for disabled pick up and drop off.
I think that's definitely one for me, so I can take that one on. That's fine. So we've actually worked quite closely with the team looking at central Winchester and the master plan there, and working also with the bus operators to work out what the future of bus travel might look like in the future. You're absolutely right that the ambition is to see a reduction in car travel through the city centre, and you're right that there will have to be some mode shift as a result of that. We are at the moment, I suppose, we have the challenge of trying to design something that works both with the situation as it currently is and as the situation might be in several years' time. So the way we've done that is we're retaining essentially the bus stops where they currently are. They would be redesigned and slightly relocated, but for all intents and purposes, buses would remain in that area. What we're also looking at, what we've also allowed for, is passive provision for another set of bus stops that essentially sit round the corner from them. So more sort of in front of or just below the station building itself. The architecture and the building lines will respond to that, and that passive provision will be maintained. As I suppose it's something that we can do as part of this concept master plan, is pass on to whoever develops the more detailed master plan for this area that passive provision should be made for buses to expand in the future. The bus operators are very comfortable with that. They're happy with that approach, and they feel that that is sufficient for their needs going forwards, based on likely scenarios as they see it. So that I completely agree with your comment. I think we do need to be planning for that future, because things are going to change. It's very hard to predict that, but that's the plan as it stands at the moment, and everybody seems on board with that. There are broader discussions about what happen to the bus network across the city as a whole, as part of other moves that are going on. But at the moment, that's the part that we're playing in that bigger picture. In terms of sufficient car parking and particularly accessible car parking, I think we see those car parks that currently exist around the station as potentially changing quite significantly in terms of how they are arranged and who gets to use which bits of it. So, for example, the car park to the west of the station at the moment, as you come out the west entrance, the one's in front of you, there's a bunch of what we would call perpendicular car parking that sits at ground level outside of the car parking structure at the moment, that noses out. That potentially could go and become the drop-off area. Equally, it could become accessible. We've got the car park as well that you access via Majestics. It's quite hard to describe where that one is because it doesn't have a name, that street, but essentially to the northeast of the station. Again, we're looking at really trying to improve that link, looking at redeveloping potentially that car park through there, or at least its alignment, creating a new space for the station on that side, and really improving the quality of the link that takes you through from there. So again, that would be another space where both accessible parking could be located, and drop off would be very convenient from that location. So we are trying to fit all of this in, and we are thinking about all of these things. It's, as ever, there's a lot of compromise involved, particularly at train stations, because there is so much demand on them. But no, we appreciate the question, and the nudge is something we are considering.
Emily Fish has a comment about the state of the station. Are there plans to ensure that the station is renovated and updated as part of any future plan? And goes on to explain a bit later that she's talking more about the ancillary buildings and some of the decisions that have been made. So the running of the underpass, the rotting canopies over the platform. I think we're not in a position, because stations have permitted development for purposes of running the railway. We're not really in a position to define a planning policy for them in terms of what they do with the building. That wasn't in scope. I don't think we had a conversation about how they might be wanting to. Or were we able to have much of a conversation about how they might change the use of the station to reflect the wider master plan?
We are in close dialogue with South West Railway that operate the station and Network Rail. They do have an improvement plan, which they're consulting the council and county council on. But in terms of the actual buildings themselves, obviously we'd hope, particularly with the multi-storey car parks, that over time they'll be able to be redeveloped in line with the proposals of the Concept Masterplan. The actual maintenance of the foot tunnel and so on would fall within their current improvement plan. And as I said, we are in dialogue with them, but it's we're limited on the influence that we have over that.
But I met South Western Railways the other day to talk about a wide range of issues, but they will be coming to us as part of that. It's either that plan or a separate thing. They will be coming to us with a way forward to get rid of all the sort of Harris fencing and other stuff at the front of the station.
Where the trees are. Absolutely.
Probably sort out that front area by the trees.
Yeah, which will be a vast improvement. Yeah.
Tim Montague says, have you considered step access for ticket holders directly to station platforms other than from the main station entrance, e.g. from the southwest side at the Clifton Terrace Bridge junction? I think the answer to that is probably no, since step access is not, well, I don't know. We have talked about some other forms of access, haven't we, that go beyond that, but I don't think we've talked about that particular form of access. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
But there has been looking further afield at how people can access the station more effectively, and in particular, there was a discussion about access from the north as well.
Yeah, we're looking at potentially creating a new link onto Andover Road so that vehicles who are heading down towards the station from the north don't actually have to come all the way down Andover Road over the railway bridge and essentially through the Carfax junction. We'd like to keep as much traffic away from that as possible. So if we can capture that traffic earlier and send it into that northwestern car park, essentially there's a pub just before the bridge, and there's a gap between the two that we think is big enough to get a small junction in there to serve that car park. So that is an option that we're looking at. Some more civils work to do associated with it, but we are looking at that as a potential access. We've got another pedestrian and cycle only access that we'd like to see going up towards the college from that car park as well. But again, there's issues there in terms of ownership. But again, this is the sort of thing we can build in now so that it's a long-term plan to get there. So there are definitely other access options that we're looking at the moment. But we are, in terms of the station specifically, getting in and out of the station, that's beyond our remit really, because that sits very much with the train operator and Network Rail.
Okay. And then there's a couple of more questions coming through about highways. So Sue has said, how is it going to work working with highways because they don't have any money? I can maybe provide a bit of perspective on that. So, for example, the plans for the cattle market have actually been set back following conversations with the strategic planning team at Hampshire, so that potentially, for example, there could be a bus lane put in there. There's been enough space created to add the options for bus lanes and cycle lanes and other such things to improve traffic in that area. And there is a whole world around bidding for bus infrastructure and walking and cycling infrastructure, which that team in particular is very tied into. I don't know if there's any extra perspective needed on that. Hopefully that's
I think it is worth saying how, you know, budgets work in sort of weird and wonderful ways often in councils, and that you know, whilst the council may not have loads of cash at the moment, that's not to say that in 6 months' time they won't be successful with a bid to something like Active Travel England, be given a lump of money to go out and deliver walking and cycling improvements, or, you know, they might get money awarded to them as part of their strategic bus plan, or something like that. So I think we need to have this stuff in place, so that if and when money does become available, we're in a position to move together and in a coordinated way. And it's absolutely right. Most councils don't have a lot of money at the moment, but there are pots that are always being made available for very specific things often. But it's being ready to grasp those when they become available.
Right. And Christina asks, how can traffic flow be improved? Particularly the flow going from the Andover Road up towards the hospital, up Sussex Street and Romsey Road, and driving back down with huge traffic on the big crossroads, the Carfax Junction down Station Hill, which is problematic and adds to congestion. And I suppose that comes back to a thing that's come across on quite a lot of discussions, is there a very close conversation going on throughout this entire process with the people who are leading on the City of Winchester movement strategy, which is the sort of plan that is operating at a scale that's enough to be able to look at how we reduce traffic to the Carfax Junction. As an obvious thing that's being talked about is, you know, a North Park and Ride as part of Kings Barton, and possibly as part of Sir John Moore Barracks, and other changes of that kind, plus the bus priority measures that we touched on going past the cattle market. Otherwise, I think that's
can I just say, can I just pop in for a second, and I will come to the drop-in and won't take up any more time, but just to say that, you know, for me it seems like the station traffic is nowhere near as problematic in our area around the station as the actual traffic that comes through, and that's all of the employees from the hospital going back and forth, and you've got Peter Simmons going back and forth in this whole area, and it's very, very congested with the big crossroads at the Albion pub. So we really do need to look at, when you're looking at the station traffic, it's just a microcosm of actually the overall problem of the traffic going through. The other thing I would just say, just reiterate my comment, and I'll say more when I come in person, but, you know, this is an area of terraced houses, and we all have gardens in this area. There's already now the big multi-story part that's come out, and now been finally a bit more quiet. But the MOD site really needs to be considered as residential and not going to height, because you'll take away the light from the gardens and you'll take away the inkeeping of it. So I think it's really important to look at what Winchester's all about. This is in the city center, you know, it's not where the cathedral is, but it's still a very important part of Winchester that has a big character. And I think we need to really consider that and not go up to height. So that's just my brief
that's thank you for making
point.
that comment. And I think that's marked and heard. Any response to that?
I think on the strategic traffic point, you know, we've worked very, very closely with the county throughout this. That, you know, things like works to Junction 9 are coming forwards are predicted to make, and this is all predictions because everyone's working off of models, but they're likely to result in significant reductions in traffic in sort of city core, and that all plays to, you know, the advantage of this area if that all comes to the good. But I think, as I think has already been suggested, the scale of our site and what we're looking at, we are limited in how much we can affect that sort of broader traffic narrative that's happening at the moment. We can only kind of work within the confines of what we've got, but we're working as closely as we can with the county to make sure that we take advantage of anything that's coming forwards.
Well, it'd be really good to have, you know, some councillors at your offices on that day so that we can, you know, talk to you, because I understand that you can't solve all of Winchester's problems, but to have more councillors there to, you know, to really join in on the project. It's a big project, and as I said, it's very visionary, and you know, it's very. I mean, it's a good plan. We just need to consider the conversation.
Great.
I'll go mic up again.
Thank you
Just
for that.
picking up the point of height. I think we did say in the presentation that the site, as you say, at the end of Gladstone Street, the DIO site was going to be residential and was going to be respectful of those houses around it. So I think we're suggesting 4 stories there.
Yeah, well, it's not a 4-story area.
Yeah, but there are buildings that are tall, sort of generally. I mean, I know Gladstone Street is a 2-story terrace, but there are other buildings that are not. So we're suggesting here that we could go taller onto the main station road, but obviously we'd come back down smaller as we come in to meet the terraces themselves. So we didn't feel that scale shift was a problem.
But in that site, you're actually really reducing the light on the gardens that are all on the other side because of the north-south, you know, situation. So, you know, anyway, we can. I don't.
I think that sounds like something we need to capture and make sure that there's understanding.
Let's discuss it more. Let's
how light will be affected.
Please come into the offices and talk about it. But as you can see from the diagram there, the buildings wouldn't have any relationship directly with any gardens because they would. As you can see, they're wrapping around the street side. So anyway, please come in and talk about.
Sorry, they're my neighbors on 2 sides. So I'm the furthest terrace. I'm saying this publicly, but this terrace, they're my neighbors. So I'm the one at the top of Gladstone Street. So I have them on, and also I've got a building that they have, which you haven't quite captured in the plan, but there's a big building which is at the back of my garden. And so I'm already compromised on 2 sides. So and that's just at the height of the MOD is right now.
And I think this would be significantly improved because obviously those buildings would be removed.
I think it sounds like it'd be a helpful discussion to have the detailed discussion and an important point to make at the drop-in. It was great that you can make it. Rosie Tatham is talking about concern about tree cover being reduced in the Carfax area recently, and scale, but also talking about how stepped back developments mask their scale, and supporting heats. It's good. Small pedestrian alleys, lanes, cut through as a part of Winchester's character. So I think that point's been made. David Ash comes back to this point about the only way into the city appears to be down City Road and Jury Street. Does the Master's Plan context need to be extended to Westgate? And this is where there's an intersection between different pieces of work. But presumably, I mean, when you're thinking about designing the station, I mean, will there be sort of flagging to show that there's 2 possible ways into town from, or is that too much detail?
No, and that's probably my fault in missing some of the things. I think it is. We've always seen there as being 2 key routes into the town centre, obviously through City Road and Jury Street, but also towards Westgate. And yeah, that is a very important route that we do need to pick up on. That leads into the town centre, and I think some of the things about, you know, it's not only about the public realm improvements along there, but I think some of the development perhaps at the DIO site will help to lead people along there and make it a more attractive route as well. So yeah, apologies, I missed that.
I'd just reinforce that if the copy of the boards, this is intentionally cropped in to make this more visible on screen. The boards that we'll show at the drop-in, the boards that are available online, they show the fullness of this diagram, which extends down, and I've cropped off the arrow that shows the equal importance of this route into town via City Road and via the over Newburgh Street and into the Westgate there. So that is in our minds and on this diagram, when it's shown in full, is given kind of equal prominence.
Thank you. Dorothy has comments about the residents of Newburgh Street as well, being concerned that the MOD building looks like it would be replaced by a significantly higher building. So we've touched on that, and it's useful to have that point made. And Caroline Scott is saying something similar about 5 stories next to a conservation area. Although I think, yeah, are there other 5-story buildings in the conservation area or next to the conservation area?
I can't offhand point to buildings of that height in the conservation area, but there will be. And I think some of the buildings along Andover Road are within the conservation area and are up to 6 stories high.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
and the
I'd
county
say
council building is between
sorry.
5 and 6, isn't it? Or I'm not sure.
There's a significant height to that, the county office building as it addresses Carfax, but there is existing height on the either side of Andover Road as it gets to that Worthy Lane Junction, which is where we're sort of responding to the existing height in terms of where you might put some emphasis on the Cattle Market site. So it does address that junction, response to the existing buildings that line Andover Road there. So that's
so there's quite a lot of comments about height, although a request for a modern spire. And again, Christina talking about terraced housing and the character of the area. Tom Ward agreeing with Christina and Dorothea. So a lot of questions about the height of buildings around Newburgh Street and Granville as well. Tom Ward talking about car parking for residents and how their needs are met with any residential development. And what car parking assumptions have you put in?
So we're looking at very, very low levels of car parking provision for a lot of the new, particularly on things like Gladstone Car Park, anything that close to the station. I think in line with policy would be very low in terms of car parking. As you move away from it, so later stages looking at things on Cattle Market, then that would obviously car parking would be introduced in lower numbers as you move away. So it will be in line with council policy, but we're also conscious that a lot of those car parks that ostensibly look like station or city centre car parks are used by residents as well. We've worked very closely with the City Council in terms of the emerging car parking strategy that they want to kind of implement and ensuring that we have a phased approach to this so that we have options going forward. I think that's kind of critical to stress, is that we're sort of showing a finished state here, but this will come forward in stages, and we've got a series of stages and different routes to get here depending on how car parking demand changes over the next decade, over the next 15, 20 years. We can't tell for certain what's going to happen, whether we're all going to ditch our cars or we're all going to be driving around in self-driving taxis or whatever it might be. But we have options on all of these sites to kind of start, I suppose, reducing car parking, but in different stages depending on how much is still required going forwards. Network Rail are in exactly the same position. They don't know what they're going to need in terms of how we're all going to be accessing train stations in the next 10 years or whatever it will be, and how much car parking they might need. So we've built that flexibility into this because obviously we can't just get rid of car parking if it's required. But we have to put something that we have to have a plan going forwards of what it might look like should that car parking be released.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the rather subtle dashed lines on the Cattle Market. So the Cattle Market site, which is currently completely car parking, we would take a phased approach to that in terms of the development, or it would be likely that it could be done in a phased approach. We've laid out the concept master plan to enable that when a future development came forward. But the levels of the site offer the ability to retain car parking at ground floor and build over the top of it with development, which is what we'd show in this area and this area. So both where the current car park is cut into and is lower than road, and then where the level change between Andover Road and Worthy Lane is, so you could come in and park underneath development on this corner.
Okay. And we have Rachel has raised a point. Rachel Cridge has raised a point about the height of buildings near Gladstone Street, but also the trees in the City Council car park and actually it's also a City Council car park that County Council employees park in. And what can be done to have further conversations with local residents aside from the drop-in and the ability to respond online. Please. Silence.
I don't know, Emma, did you want to say something about other opportunities for engaging?
Hello. Yep. So there's the as we've said, we've got the drop-in session on the 19th. There's the online looking at station approach and the online survey through Citizen Space. There's my email address that if anybody wants to raise any questions, they can email the team directly. And we've got a station approach email address as well that people can email in or write into the city offices. So that's on there for you. The email station approach at winchester.gov.uk. There's phone number, and you can also email myself, e-Taylor, at winchester.gov.uk.
Okay, let's thank you. As we keep going, because I realise we're over time now, and apologies for that. Christina LaRue says, think about the wider traffic. We've talked about that already. Have you been here during rush hour? When you go to the Design Engine offices, you will realise the answer to that is yes. John Hearn, what about the impact of views, and there will be a visual impact assessment as part of the master plan?
Not as part of this concept master plan, because our understanding is that would be tackled in the proposals for detailed applications on each individual site as and when they came forward. Right, this just sets a framework, if you like, for where height can be considered with those development parcels, of which each one would have to go forward through the normal checks and balances for each development site through the planning process. But we're not at that stage yet.
Yeah, but work has been done on that in the past, and there are lots of views available from the points that John refers to, and others around the city that can be used to evaluate the impact of that. And I've certainly looked at the visibility of the taller elements of what we might put forward from those positions. In some of them, development of over 3 or 4 stories would be visible. I don't necessarily see that as a problem. You need to be aware of it, and you need to make sure that buildings are designed with an awareness of the distance and extent over which they will be visible. So it's not something that we will avoid, but as Ollie says, it's not something that we're going to be specific about in the concept master plan.
So in terms of I'm just going through the rest of the comments. Oscar Silva has talked about the importance of disabled step-free access at the station, which slightly ties back to the conversation we were having earlier, to make sure that the station is accessible to all users. And I think that's how you're currently thinking, but and then Tim is saying that Design Engine will be coming to the Orams Arbor Residents Association. For those of you who are members of that, then that's an opportunity for consultation as well. Tom is talking about parking need in the area. and the need for proper modelling of that, and the pressure on the streets already. The current policy says that, and I believe, and I know that Hampshire are keeping it, is that any new development does not get the ability to park on street. So that is something that will need to be thought about. But certainly the current policy is, and it's staying the policy, and Hampshire have carried that forward from Winchester. Any new building does not get an on-street parking permit. And then, is underground car parking feasible? I remember, given that much of the area is made up ground. Any comment on that?
I think certainly on Cattle Market, it is the case because the way the levels naturally fall away and the way it's already been terraced. I think the view is, looking at that site at the moment, actually it lends itself quite well to creating structured car parking underneath new development along there, relatively economically, because these things can get astronomically expensive quite quickly. But of all the sites, that's the one that looks most plausible in that regard.
Yeah, I can support that, Ollie. That is correct. The other levels there do help us. The other sites less so, I think, in truth. And as you say, the cost becomes prohibitive in terms of the values.
We also, I'm just quickly going to the Q&A area. Hugh McNaughton has said, makes the point about there will need to be a rethink of traffic flows to keep traffic out of the centre. Absolutely, and that's the objective of the City of Winchester Movement strategy. He's got an interesting point here. I don't see as much of a focus on the site being a true transport connecting hub as I would have expected. Have you considered additional bus connections to and from the station, i.e. shifting the focus away from the Broadway?
So it's a very good point, actually, and we've kind of gone backwards and forwards on this. The view from the bus operators is that although there is some interchange between bus and train, that is not the primary use of buses in this area. It's quite interesting. There's sort of my assumption was that lots of people will be getting off of buses and onto trains and vice versa. Actually, as an interchange between various modes, really it's used in quite a traditional sense. And actually, buses, they see this operationally as key to them, but people generally, lots of people get off buses and travel through here in order to access the city centre proper. So I completely take your point. This is going to remain an interchange for people being dropped off and picked up, people parking private cars, people cycling to the train station. But that key public transport interchange between bus and rail isn't perhaps as large, certainly as I expected it to be, and possibly yourself as well. But no, this remains, as I said, fundamentally, this is about movement, this area. Its reason for being is the station and the access that provides. And we need to make that as seamless as possible, and that's where I suppose it lies somewhere between my work and what Laura's looking at in terms of sort of the sense of place and sense of arrival that she's working with.
And Carmel asks, we would like more detail on how many houses would possibly go on the station's western approach adjacent to Stockbridge Road and roundabout, which is already a busy main road into Winchester. Also, is the tree canopy on Stockbridge Road protected?
I'm not sure if Laura is still on the call in terms of answering about the trees, but yes, the tree canopy that borders Stockbridge Road, both on the west side of the station and on the east side of the station, is not something that's something we'd be looking to preserve and enhance, and not adversely affect. In fact, we see that as one of those key links, if you like, on the green layout. There we go. So these areas here, these arrows drawing you along Stockbridge Road with trees, some of the key assets of the site, and making them more biodiverse in terms of the planting, making them more accessible for people to enjoy and appreciate in terms of what the public realm might do adjacent to them. So that's an example where removing car parking to enable places to sit and walk underneath the tree canopies there, which could then be further furnished by low-level planting, etc., to add more greenery is an example there on the west side, and similar could be done as you get more space for people and less space for cars and traffic on the Station Hill area there, so you can bring people closer to the greenery and add further greenery to complement those trees.
Yeah, it's obviously, as Ollie says, it's our plan to retain those trees. There is a number in terms of a TPO protection, if that's the question. There is obviously a number of trees in the area that do have TPOs, but off the top of my head, it's been a while since I've looked at that, so I couldn't comment if they are protected. But yeah, no, it's definitely our intention to keep those and enhance them. They're a very strong character element of Winchester. So yes.
And thank you. And one last question, a great question to finish on, actually, again from Oscar Silva. What is the strategy to improve the sense of arrival to a historic city like Winchester from the station?
Yeah, and I can jump in on that one, Oliver. And it is a good question, and I think at the moment and it was interesting. We were actually at the station on Saturday handing out leaflets, and standing out on the full flood side of the station. You know, a number of people come out and they're sort of, do you know how to get to the town centre? You know, it doesn't really have that. As a visitor and as someone myself who lives down in Poole, I get the train up often to Winchester. So it doesn't have that presence or that sense of the city itself. So I think it's a combination of what Ollie and I really been talking about. It's about, you know, creating that space in front of the station that prioritizes pedestrians, that gives people a little bit of space as they come out of the station to understand where they are. To gather their sort of thoughts. It needs to be a high quality public realm. I think that really reflects the materials and the qualities of Winchester itself. Again, it's sort of about reflecting the historic buildings that you have around it. I know we've sort of talked about the station needing approval, but that is a nice historic building that sort of sets the area, as is the old registry office there. So I think it's about creating that sense of arrival at the station itself, but then also about making improvements from those key routes that lead into the town centre, whether that be via City Road and Jury or down to the West Gate again. So it's really about making the station feel more part of the town centre and about creating procession along those routes to the town centre. Although, as you have mentioned, some of those are outside the remit of our study. But again, through our study and highlighting the important role that those routes play, hopefully brings them into play as part of, as Oliver mentioned, you know, other funding bids and opportunities. So even though it's not within our red line always, you know, we have an important role to play, in sort of helping shape those spaces outside of it.
Yeah, I just reiterate. I'm sorry, Steve.
Oh well, I was just going to make the point that when I described the conservation area within which the study area sits, this site was specifically excluded from the conservation area when it was last reviewed in the early 1980s. It would be nice to think that when the conservation area is next reviewed, that this area might have lifted sufficiently to be included in it. And I think the clues and the cues that are given by the character of the area within the conservation area is something that we can pick up on to help shape the character of what we're going to create.
And I think it's also just important to add again, it isn't just about this visual here that we're showing, it is about the other side of the station as well, and making that feel important and that an important arrival space into the city of Winchester as well.
I'd just like to finish and say that you know, this is a station approach concept master plan. We can't prescribe all and improve all of those routes all the way into the city. We kind of go as far as we can within the red line and the area of influence in terms of improving the route down to the Carfax Junction, and as John rightly emphasised, the route up and across towards the West Gate, albeit not only as far as the red line goes. But I think in terms of the arrival sense, the point I would like to make is that at the moment you come out of the station, it doesn't feel like you're in a place. So whether or not you can get into the middle of the city of Winchester, we can't influence that, but we can create a place that when you come out of the station, you feel like you've arrived somewhere of quality. And the spaces and places that we can offer as part of this development makes you feel like you've got somewhere. And from then, that's the start of your experience into Winchester, from where you find the routes, which will hopefully be improved by other projects.
What a fine note to end on. Thank you very much indeed. Ollie. Well, thank you, everybody. Ollie, Laura, Stephen, Richard, Emma. Thank you, Eleanor, for setting it up. I hope I've got everybody, and if I haven't, I apologise. Thank you, everybody, for coming along and for the thoughtful and helpful questions that people have put in, and it's much appreciated. And for those of you who are coming to the drop-in, I think we look forward to seeing you there as well. So thank you very much indeed, everybody. And thank you particularly to the whole team from Design Engine and their colleagues who have put such thought and creativity and effort into producing a really, I think, a lot of very positive comments here, inspiring and positive presentation, but also being open to listening to the comments that we've heard this evening. So thank you.